Hey guys, welcome back to the PX3 channel. Before we get started, I'd like to say a big thank you to our sponsors, Beyond Odyssey, one of the local shops put around here. Go to them for any stock you want for any of your games, as well as Eternal Magic. So they've got some singles, so if you need singles for One Piece or Magic or anything, check them out as well. And remember to hit that subscribe button, hit the bell, leave any comments if you guys have any questions. But yeah, so had a pretty good week this so far. We've just come off the back of going undefeated in 8 separate pre-releases. Alright, so 8 is a pretty big number. 3 of them were from OPO2 though, but continuing that streak, we had 5 in OPO3. So that's the Smokers and the VVs. We've already sold and traded off a few, but we've still got a couple left there. But yeah, it's been a lot of fun. I really enjoy the pre-release events. It's great seeing new faces come around to the stores. They get really big turnouts. They're really fun. I love building. I love having a bit of a different pace. I enjoy the whole process and I seem to do pretty well at it. So I wanted to make this video to show how I build and how I play and sort of some of the skills you might need to be able to take out some wins. I'll go through what leaders I won with. So I think the first leader I won with in OPO2 was a Bonkov. That's the weirdest one that I've won with. And the reason I played a Bonkov was because I pulled an alt art leader of Bonkov, and there's actually a rule in the Bandai, if you read the fine print, if you pull an alt art leader in pre-release, you do have to play it, unfortunately. We still took out the dub. I've taken out the dub on 3 Kid leaders. So Kid is probably the most busted leader if you're looking for wins. Most of the time he's good, but he's not always the best, depending on what you pull. So I also have won once on Zoro, twice on Katakuri. Both the times I played Katakuri I had 10 cost mum, so that's why I picked that. And then we won once on Kuro, which is great with East Blue. So there's different reasons why you might be playing different leaders, and I'll get into that a little bit later. What else was there with the leaders? Oh, actually, I did want to mention, not all of these were technically first place. It was undefeated. I haven't lost around in these 8 consecutive matches, but sometimes I might have come second or something if there was like 2 undefeated people. So I'd mention that. So I want to go in depth, but also be very general. I don't want to go in depth on specific cards for like OPO3. I just want to do a general idea of how you build decks, what your strategies are, how you organize your cards, and then when you get into the games, like what strategies do you need, what skills do you need, and really for pre-release, you really need fundamentals and just good game sense. So there's like, you don't need to know a specific strategy like you do when you're playing the normal set. So fundamentals, being flexible is really, really important, being able to adapt to the situations, and as well as your mentality. That's a really big one, I think, for pre-releases. Because if you're opening your packs and you're getting down already just from what you've opened, or maybe you think your packs are cracked and you think you're going to win for sure, these things can throw you off and you might not play your best, or maybe you get your mulligan and that throws you off, or you're just not making the right decisions, and sometimes people just need to slow down or something and they need to make sure they think correctly. So there's going to be 2 more parts to this video. So the first part I'm going to throw up is it's going to be me practicing opening 6 packs, and you'll see how I build, how I organize, and the decisions I make. Hopefully you can learn something from it. It might not be perfect. Leave any comments if you think there's something I could have done differently or what you would have done. I'd love to learn still more. But yeah, if you want to see how I do it, this is how I do it. And then afterwards, I'll get into some more of the strategies and things you can do within the game that can help you get the dub. So guys, hope you like the video. A lot of the times when we were building, you got like up to 45 minutes. It should not take that long. You should be able to get through it pretty easily. I'm sure a lot of you have seen other videos of telling you what cards are good, what cards are bad in pre-release. But when you're opening your packs, you don't always get your options of the best cards or the worst cards. You've got to make decisions. So I'm going to show you how I organize my cards and then hopefully go through some decision making. I want to go through it quickly because it can be pretty time consuming if you're looking at each individual card for a long time. Maybe I'll try to read out some of the effects, or I'll show you them if I think they're really important. You'll get given 6 packs, the VV and 2 pre-release packs that you can put into your deck. I'm not going to show the VV and 2 pre-release packs. I'm just going to show the 6 packs for today. When I build, it's a 40 card deck, so I like to have 40 sleeves ready. And that will make it a lot easier at the end. So I don't actually have to count my cards. As long as I've got my 40 sleeves filled, then I'm all good to go. Choosing your leader, I do that at the end after I've seen what cards I've got. This set, I think these were definitely the 4 best leaders. If you've got a lot of East Blue characters, Kuro can be cracked because he can rest a character as well as getting the double swing, and that rest is absolutely huge in this because you're looking at mostly 5 cost as your highest characters, and being able to rest gives you so much control in this, especially because you don't have a lot of defensive events and you don't have big characters. Zoro is, I think, your best option if you've got really, really low characters, you don't have many big characters, or if you're running not many 2k counters and not many blockers, not many events. If you've got all these like 2 4s and 3 5s and you've just got so many of them, Zoro's going to be your best option, and just go aggressive, and then your characters almost turn into blockers because you're going so aggressive, and that will turn your really lack of defense into defense because you're going aggressive. Katakuri's a lot better than I thought he was. The plus 1k, as well as looking at your opponents or your own and then sorting it out is actually really huge in this, getting that information and sorting it. And if you pull a 10 cost Big Mom, of course, you've got to play it. Eustace Captain Kid is probably the all-around best deck. If you've got a good amount of defense, you've got a good amounts of medium characters, bigger characters, whatever, Kid fits right in. And you get to play a bit more risky cards of Kid because you can discard them at the end of the game as well. So I think he's definitely the all-around best, but there's definitely times where you want to play these other ones. But we'll see which one we pick at the end. So we'll start opening. But before I start opening, I want to explain how I organize my cards. So I like to set up little areas across my mat, and this will make it go a lot quicker during your decision making. So at the top, I put all my characters and what cost they are, and you just sort of put them through, as long as you think they're playable. If there's a card that's like maybe 5/5 without counter, and you think there's no way you're playing that, you can put it straight to the side. So there are all your characters. Down the bottom, I like to have a section for blockers. You're probably playing all the blockers that you pull, unless you pull like 20, which is not going to happen really. It's really unlikely. So put all your blockers in a pile because they're probably all getting played. You're going to put all your 2Ks in a pile because they're all getting played. Any defensive events, you're most likely playing all of them unless you've got a really absurd amount and you don't have much spots to fill. You usually play most of your defensive events. Your other events that like sort of control the board or give you a bit more aggression, you don't play all of them always. So put them in a pile, and that'll be one of the decisions at the end of the game. And then also, if there's cards that you just know you're not going to play, leaders, dons, cards that don't have great effects, you can just keep chucking them to the side. You can always look at them again later. But yeah, so you sort of organize it like that, and then you can sleeve all the cards you know you're definitely going to play, and then you're left with a smaller pool of what you have to decide from. And so you don't have to spend all of your time on that decision making for every single card. And so what I'll do is I'll open them, I'll show you the cards and sort them out. You can see them getting sorted. I'll try to read through their effects in case you don't know what they are. I'll show you, you might not be able to see the text though while I'm placing them. So we'll start off with a 1 cost 3k. It's got East Blue, so that's something to take note of if you're playing Kuro. 3/5, it doesn't have counter, so that one might not get played, but we put it there anyway. 3/5 Buggy doesn't have counter, but it has a great effect, can't be killed by Slash. 2/4 Vanilla, 2/4 Vanilla. Card that can only be played in, what's his name? Iceberg, so that's getting chucked to the side for me. This one, I would only ever play it in Kuro, so I'm going to put it there, but it's probably not getting played unless we pick Kuro. Sanji's Pilaf is cracked in this because it's 3 cost, draw 2 cards. This is way more of a resource game than the normal set is, so it's cracked. It's got a trigger as well. 2k counter gets placed down. 5/6 body with 1k counter is good enough anyway, and it does have blocker, so put that in your 5 cost. Big Mom to the side. Fire Fist, I'm going to put it down here. If you get a deck that has lots of events, you can play it, but it's probably a card we're not playing. But I'll put it down there. Sanji's Pilaf I might leave in the defensive events, just because that's one we're for sure playing. Let's see what we get with our next pack. So this guy, even if I was playing Kuro, I probably am not running him, so I'm going to chuck him to the side. 3/4, I'm going to chuck him just in here, because he can be good if you play Kuro. He's got worse stat lines than a Vanilla. 1/3, I mean, if we're going Zoro, maybe, but that's probably not getting played, but I'll put it there anyway. Kurio, he gets rush and can attack a character, so that is a decent effect. I usually like to run him just because I think sometimes you just need that one extra attack against a character to like clear the board. You don't get many 2Ks, so this card's going to be great. I definitely think you'll run most of all your defensive events. Out of the bag, I didn't play it. If you've got a really cracked Kuro deck, maybe, but I'm going to put that to the side actually for now. Even if you run a Kuro deck, you don't need to run Cat out of the bag. Vanilla 2 cost, a black card that does nothing, it like KOs a 0 cost, so it's going to be too hard to get. A 1 cost that like discards itself, putting that to the side, none put to the side, 2k counter keep, and then a defensive event up to 3k, you got to discard one. Like, yeah, you're discarding, but you're probably going to be throwing cards for 1k counter anyway, so I just add all of these in. Let's keep going. I've only got 1 5 cost at the moment. You really want to get as many 4 and 5 costs as you can, so that's not looking too hot. This like Negs Vanilla is not good enough. We've got a 1-3. It has East Blue, so that's like another Kuro card. Vanilla stat line, but no counter, so possibly not played. We're only now getting our blockers, so we're going to chuck her down here. That doesn't really do much, it's just a stage. So this one you have to get rid of a life to play, but it's got a really strong effect and a really strong trigger. So I'm going to chuck it down here with that Fire Fist, because it's going to be a maybe. So that's going to be one for a decision later on. Another 3. We've got a 5-5 that has an attack, and it's Galila, so that's just not getting played. Because you just play 3 cost instead of that. Another 3 cost 5k. I think it has East Blue as well. This is a great card. KOs a 4 or less, and you get a body, and it has a trigger. So that's just cracked in this one. Kai is a 2k counter, and Charlotte Cracker is 4-5, so really close to vanilla, and it gets +1 and double attack. So it's really, really cracked. You can force your opponent to get rid of lots of cards, or they have to take 2k, or they have to take 2 life from that one. It also has trigger, so really, really good. And also we're really low on 4 costs and 5 costs, so even if it wasn't cracked, we'd probably be taking it at this stage. So that one said before, we don't play that. Vanilla 2-4, vanilla 3-5. We're getting a lot of 3 costs here. More 1 costs. That card can't be played unless you're playing Iceberg. 2-4. A defensive event. I was saying I like to play most of those. This card is cracked. It's really close to a vanilla, but has an effect that you can use throughout the whole game. So if you can get him down and just keep using his effect without attacking, like if you like get 4 or 5 rested on and then attack with him late in the late game, then that's cracked. So a very good card. I always play him even if you're not looking to run a lot of low characters. This guy is close to a vanilla. If you've got triggers, he gets an extra effect. So it looks like we've got a lot of events. So I think that's honestly a card you could look at playing. Most of the characters. This is probably not the best event, so I'm going to chuck that to the side. Brand new. It doesn't look like we've got enough navy, so that'll get chucked to the side. Jin can rest 2 of your opponent's characters with cost of 4 or less. Your leader has to be East Blue though, so that would be a card we'd be looking to play if we do end up choosing Kuro. Kuro is actually not looking too bad at the moment. I think it's a Kuro or a Zoro game because we just have not pulled many 5s or 6s. I'm sorry, 5s or 4s. So yeah, we've got more East Blue here. And we don't have many blockers either. We're gonna take the 3 cost vanilla. We've got a blocker there. We've got more East Blue, small. We've got another 4-6. Corgi is like a 1-0 that does nothing. A blocker. Another 3-5. We've got so many 3-5s. We've got a blocker. Finally, a good 5-6, and we pulled the 10 cost Big Mum. You've always got to consider playing Katakuri when you pull Big Mum because you can only use her effects in a yellow deck, or you could play Black Yellow Mum. It's actually not horrid, but I think Katakuri is a little bit better. Obviously, your opponent discards a life and you gain 1. Absolutely huge. You pretty much win the game when you play this, unless they've got something absurdly OP. Yeah, just wins you games. So that is a cracked card that will definitely influence what leader you're playing. Let's see what we get in our last pack. It's actually, I think this is looking like a really hard decision on what leader to play. I've got another 4-6, that's really good. We're getting more blockers now, so it's looking like it definitely could play Katakuri. We've got more blockers we're getting there. We've got a 3-4. We have got Fiery Dodd. It's a decent finisher card, gives 4k to your leader, so we're going to chuck that down with the other maybe events. What else have we got here? We've got, again, a card that could be played in Kuro, but we've already got so many small East Blue. Even if we were playing Kuro, I'm not sure if we're playing that. I might chuck that to the side. Because I honestly think we're looking to go Kata now that we've gotten that Big Mum. Kata the bag, Tempest Kick, these don't do anything. Shirahoshi, you definitely can play her just in case you get the trigger, but like, I don't think you're ever playing her for 5. I don't think that's ever good. I didn't play her. I saw some people play her and get success, but along to the side, obviously. 1,000 Swords is a cracked card, really good effect in this. Get the bottom of 5 cost. It has a nice trigger as well. So that one you for sure put down in your like I'll put it in that same pile, but that's for sure getting played. Now I think I'm probably going Kata, so we're playing the 10 cost, so I think I'm probably going to put this pudding in. You wouldn't usually put her in, even when you've got low numbers. Oh, we really don't have a lot of yellow though. I might put her to the side maybe, and then we'll make that decision once we see how many Big Mum we have. But we've got the 10 cost, so if she is what gets me the 10 cost, that could win us the game. We don't have many fives, and we've only got a few good fours. Like these aren't like, and some of these you aren't even wanting to play on the turn. Like this one, you're not playing on four. That's more of a sort of a later one that you want to play after you've got some stuff on the board. I definitely think there's an argument to be made to play Kuro, but when I see Big Mom, I just want to play Katakuri. So we're gonna start sleeving. I definitely think you could either play Katakuri or I think Kuro. It's strange that these two are, I'm putting these to the side. I think Zoro as well, because you've got so many 3 costs and 2 costs and 1 cost. You could definitely see an argument for him, but I think there's so much East Blue as well as the 10 costs that, strangely enough, usually I don't go towards these when you've got the options for the other twos, but it's definitely an 0-3 leader, I think, this time. So what I'm going to do now is we're going to start sleeving, and you sleeve the cards that you're definitely going to play. So go with your blockers and your 2Ks. You're playing all of those unless you've got an absurd amount of blockers. Like if you had like 20 blockers, maybe yeah, you're cutting some, but I don't think that ever happens. So we're just going to sleeve all of those. So how many do we have there? So we've got 4. We've only got 5. So that's another. So five's good, but you can definitely have more blockers in this, and that's why Kuro could be a decent shout in this, just because your rested characters almost become like when you rest your 2 to restand, then they almost become like blockers because your opponent's going to want to swing into these minis so that you don't keep getting your restand, and so it can give you some nice defense in a way. We've only got 3 2Ks, but we've got a good amount of defensive and refill here. So we've got 3 defensive events as well as Sanji's Pilaf, so that's not looking too bad. This isn't crazy, but this would definitely be good enough. I've had games where I've only had like 1 2K and maybe like a couple events, so this is much better. Those games you definitely be wanting to play Kuro or Zoro. I think this is almost just enough defense to be playing Katakuri. 1,000 Swords you're for sure playing. We're not seeing a lot of removal. When I see not a lot of removal, I think I do play Thunderbolt. So it's 2 cost, kill a 5k, but you have to discard a life. Don't play it if you've got heaps of removal, because you can just use your other cards. But if you don't have anything, I think it's a card you want to play. Removal is cracked in this, so we can sleeve that up as well. If we were playing Kuro, see, I don't even know if I'm... So I don't think... Oh, Fire Fist... Wait, actually, let me think about Fire Fist real quick. So that's if we've got an event. How many events do we have? We've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So that's another removal card, but we have to see another event. I don't think I want to run it just because it's not consistent. I don't want to get this card dead in hand. If I was playing Kid, if you were playing Kid, you could definitely play this. Play it with your events because you can just get rid of it. But I'm not playing Kid, so I think I'm going to put this to the side. If we end up playing Kuro, Fiery Dollars for sure. So how many East Blue do we have? Maybe let's count, actually. So we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14 East Blue. So that's a good amount, but I want to go for the Charlotte Katakuri. I think we have to. So because I'm going to leave this Fiery Dog to the end and see if we've got better cards to place that. So that's not a for sure put in. Let's count how many yellow cards we have and see if we want to put, well, not yellow, sorry, Big Mom. So we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Actually, all those, some of them might have been my fault. No, that was all. So I think it's 3, 1, 2, yeah, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. That's not Big Mom. 7, 8. We've only got 8. I don't think Charlotte Pudding is worth running when you've only got 8. She can be a 1k counter, and then she could be like a last resort. I'm going to put it down with Fiery Doll. We can decide that at the end. Let's keep putting the rest of our great cards in. So Charlotte Linlin's for sure getting played. And then all your 5 and 4s, you're pretty much playing all of the good ones of those. So Rob Lucci's cracked because he rests a character, 5/6, neg 1 Don to rest like a 5 cost or something. That's crazy in this. You literally can win games off dropping him early and then just controlling the board. Bluno can get blocker and can get a CP back. Any vanilla stat lines, so these 2 4/6s are cracked. If you get 5/7s, they're cracked. Chew is one of the best cards. You get to kill a 4 cost and drop a body. Jin, you can rest 2 characters if that one's if your leader is Kuro, and I don't think we're gonna play Kuro. We've gone with the Big Mom, so I'm gonna put that one to the side, unfortunately. If we're playing Kuro, then for sure we would, I mean, you could play Arlong maybe to get both, but we don't want to play with 4 life. So, Charlotte Cracker. I usually actually don't put them together usually. I usually leave them to see how many we've got so we don't have many big things. So I think we're wanting to run a lot of 3 costs here because we don't have many 4 costs. This is unfortunate. It does sort of, I'm almost regretting not picking Kuro. But I think 10 costs is just so good. So I think you go through, get all the vanillas, get all the big mum. Well, you don't need the big mum because we're not running the pudding. But anything that looks like a vanilla or is better than a vanilla, let's go just chuck those in. So this 3/4 is probably not getting put in. I like the rush card. It can be a good play when if I've got 5 Don, put a couple Don on him to like get an extra attacker because I don't have many big cards. 3/4, I'm gonna put that to the side. Let's just chuck all these vanillas in. Vanilla, so that's got counter. So we've got 4 there. Buggy, you always put in because if your character's only got slash, then he is going to absolutely wreck face. So how many have we got now? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. But we don't have many, so that would usually be good enough, but we do not have many 4 or 5 costs. So I'm going to chuck some of these in. I think, how many do we want with no counter is a question. So let's leave it at that, just a couple more without counter, because I don't want to do it too heavy. So this one's unsleeved. And let's add some 2 costs in. So Haruto is cracked because he gives you that Don every turn. So he's for sure going in. I think we're probably going to get pretty low on hand size with this deck. So you got to be careful because we just do not have those 4 or 5 costs. We've got some defensive events. Maybe play a bit more aggressive. Maybe we're flooding the board and hopefully trying to distract them and then get our Big Mom out is what we would be doing with this deck. 5. I think we can go for 6 on here, and we've got 4 cards left that we can put in. So I think the pudding we're not chucking in. The fiery doll we definitely are probably going to put in now because we've got that space. So this guy's banish, and we don't have many 4 costs. So I think we're going to put him in because we don't have that many cards. It's a card I want to always. So these are the decisions you got to make. So you don't always have the cards you want. So you've got to decide: do you want to chuck it in? So that's good enough, I think. These 1 costs, I don't think I'm going to chuck in. So we're going to chuck them off to the side now. It's good to always sort of have a look at what your deck's got. We've got a lot of 3 costs now. We've got a good amount of defense and then some control, a little bit of aggression at the end there. What I'm going to do now, we've got just 2 cards left. I'm going to double check through the cards that we've put off to the side. Look for any 2k counters or any cards that you might have missed that could be good. I'm honestly considering putting, like, if we've just, because what, we've got 2 4s, so I'm going to actually putting in, because we've got 2 4s and Big Mom, as well as a blocker, and I think there was the event. I don't know where that event's gone now. I swear I put in, okay, we'll see if we can find that event. I swear I put a Big Mom event in. Maybe we look for more Big Mom cards. So I'm not seeing any 2Ks. That's a 5/5, so that's no good. None of these are looking great. Yeah, so none of these cards look that good. So I'm going to put that 3/5 in, and the Charlotte Pudding, because even though there's not much to search, but if we're in a really dire stretch, we can play her. Otherwise, she can just be a counter. I'm trying to look for that event. I swear. Oh, there we are. So I've placed it at the bottom there for some reason. So that's searchable as well. So the cards that it does hit, if it does hit, are all pretty cracked, especially Big Mom. So let's pull out our Katakuri here. So that's our deck. Once you've got it set up, you can start mulliganing and see how it feels. So I always like to do that before you play your games. You want to sort of shuffle it around. We had not many 5 costs. We had like maybe 4 or 5 4 costs. And then we've got the big mum. So our curve is probably best going second. We had heaps of 3 costs. So going first is not bad. Going second, we can play a 3 cost and then put 1 Don on Katakuri to use as effect though. So I think I want to go second here just because we've got that big mum. So I'd usually shuffle it a bit harder, like, you know, like do the big shuffle, but we're just going to do this for now, and I'll show you a mulligan, see what it looks like. 1, 2, so you usually practice them, and you got then sort of decide if you'd keep it. So we run heaps of 3 costs. These don't have counter. We only have a few 4 or 5s, so this would be for sure mulligan for me, because I'm just looking for those 4 5s or the big mum or like a removal spell. Like you run so many 3 costs in the deck, you don't want to keep a hand that runs, it's got heaps of the 3 costs. So let's shuffle and see, like maybe we can pretend this was a mulligan and see what we would get in the game. Because that, yeah, you don't want to keep that just because you've got maybe like even if you're going first, I don't think you want to keep that. You want to look, because you've got so little pieces. If it was the opposite where you had heaps of big pieces, only a small amount of small pieces, then yeah, sure, keep that hand. But so let's see, 3, 4, 5. So, yeah, this deck is running a little dry on heavy things, but you know, look, we've got our Pilaf and our 3000 swords here. You might get like another couple cards, and look, in the next couple of cards, like obviously it would have been life, but you might get a big guy for your next cards, and then you've got something to drop small. You get your big guy. You probably want to let your opponent attack into your life with this deck because you are really short on your bigger guys. And obviously, I think you probably want to use Katakuri on your own deck and just search through it, either for big guys or for triggers. So if it's a small guy, put it to the bottom, look for the big guys. And I think this deck would be alright, but we are definitely missing some bigger guys. But I think it could still do solid. Definitely a option between him and Kuro, though. I hope you learnt something from the process, whether it's organizing it or what cards to take out and what to put in. You should sort of know what most cards do before you get to the event. And then once you know like what cards are good, you can just sort it out a lot quicker and then make those big decisions at the end. You don't have to be spending a lot of your time reading each card. Hopefully you know what some of them do at least. And then, yeah, you can sort of start shuffling. Looking at your mulligans is really important before you get into your next games. And also deciding what you want to go first or second against most decks. So for this one, definitely because you got the big mum and a few 4 costs, as well as I was saying with the 3/1 that you can do, play a 3 attack for 7 and sort of search your deck. I definitely think you'd probably want to be picking second most rounds. I'll go through a few other scenarios, but I'll do that in a sort of separate bit, so that'll be the next section. Okay, so now I'm going to go over some of the strategies that you should implement while you're playing your games. So I think the first thing is your turn order. You're deciding whether you go first or second. When you're deciding to go first or second, I usually base it off my deck because you don't know what your opponent's running. So you choose first or second off of your own deck. I've had success going either. So choose whatever your curve is. If you've got lots of 3 costs and some really solid 5 costs, then maybe going first is best for you. If you've got lots of 4 costs, and then maybe going second is best. Also work into your leader effects. Like if you're playing Katakuri, then he can add 1 Don to like smooth things out if you want to be fitting that into it. If you're playing the big mum with Katakuri, then maybe going second is great. If you've seen like, or maybe you're playing Kura, and like Kura I think wants to go second because you're really playing around the board, so getting those extra cards so that you can play those mini, like you don't care if they attack you first, like you take it and then you get a big hand and like play it down and play the board. So it's similar to like what you would for a lot of the normal colors, but yeah, really sort of use the fundamentals, you know, from your normal games and see what you build and then base it off that. And then when your mulligans are, I showed the mulligans before, so really just practice your mulligans when you get it. Most of the time you're not going to have enough big guys, and so big guys are what you're going to be looking for. But if you've got a really solid deck that has heaps of big guys, if you see one that's good enough, and then you've got a really good curve for the rest of it, like maybe you don't have a lot of 2Ks and you see one of your 2Ks and you've only got one removal spell and you see your one removal spell, just like then that's like a perfect hand. So you don't need to look for the best big boy if you've got a decent big boy and then you got like some decent other cards for your mulligan. Another thing I'd like to mention is you run blockers and attackers, and so a lot of the time I see people dropping their blockers early, and they might have had an attacker, and I think getting attackers out early is generally more important. I think maybe not in Kuro, but because you are going to play for board, and so you don't mind having blockers, and you can drop your little guys to rest. But for a lot of decks, like dropping like a 2 cost at 2 instead of a blocker, because he needs to get down and then wait a turn to get value out of it. And you're probably not blocking early. So like save your blockers for later. I usually put all my blockers, like if I got a hand, let me try to find a blocker. Give me a second. Um when I'm holding my hand, like if I got a hand like this, I usually put my blockers, like all the, and maybe any other like big cards that I definitely want to keep. I put them all to one side. It's like maybe this card's really good, so I'm keeping this to one side, and then I put all the others to one side. So I know these are the ones I want to keep, and I'm not gonna like mistakenly get rid of them. I kind of like almost don't view them as counter. Like they're not there. So this is what I've got to counter. This is what got to work with. But yeah, so you get these guys down first and save your blockers for later. And obviously, if you're at 5 Don, like get your 5 Don down, 4 Don guys down. Just because getting attacks out, like having that attacker ready, like you don't have to attack with it next turn, but having as many attackers ready for when they have their characters rested, so that you can like control the board or you can go aggressive, is really important. Um, Another thing is not attacking with characters. If you're wondering, I've got this board set up. It's for later, 'cause it's for something I've got to explain. But I don't really have a background for most of it. But one thing that can be really important is not attacking with characters. So like if you want to preserve your board, like if you've got a really thin hand and you've got lots of life, and so you don't have much counter, and they've got a fair few attacks, and you've got a big board, like rather than swinging here, and like if I like for example if I had 0 cards, like they just need to do a 5 and a 6 and they're gone, and then I'm not getting any cards from life. Whereas if I just leave them rested, if I've got, like, I can then take my life and replenish my hand, and then their characters are going to be rested and I can clear their board. So that's a really effective strategy in this game mode compared to the normal set, because generally you don't have time to not attack in the normal mode because people are just playing their big boys. Like 7 Don, someone's playing 7 Dofi, or like 9 Don, they're playing their Whitebeard all the time. So, but in this one, because everything's so small, like your characters on field are really important. Like if they're gonna do some decent swings at my like medium guys, like they're gonna die, and then I've got nothing on board. And on the reverse for that, donning up is really important. I see a lot of people like just tapping out with characters. Like they play, like maybe they've got 7 Don and they play a 5 cost and then they play a blocker, or they got 8 Don and they play a 4 cost and then 2 blockers. And I don't think you want to be doing that, because like if in the mid game, like that's a perfect opportunity, instead of two, like maybe play one blocker to defend one of your guys, but 2 Don on this, an 8 at like a 6. Now they've got to throw 2 cards. They're probably letting that die. Whereas if you do the 6, they're throwing their 1K, and now they've got an attacker to attack back at you. So really use your Don to like get some good attacks in. Like you use your Don, because now that blocker's left in your hand. That blocker's not going anywhere. If you just sort of, like how I was saying before, you like turn it around. Like you just keep it in your hand and it's not going anywhere. It's not on the field, but you don't have to counter it. So just pretend it's not there. Obviously you don't get to block with it. But if you've killed something, then that's not attacking you anymore. So you don't even have to throw a card for that attack. Whereas if I put the blocker, maybe I'm countering that attack anyway, and it's kind of counterproductive. Like get rid of those attackers. That's way better than like negating attack with a blocker. Uh, my notes are gone. Give me 1 second. Where was I? Yeah, and so the reason I got this board set up like this is I wanted to talk about letting things die in pre-release. It's really important. There was one game where I wasn't doing this, and it was probably one of my hardest games because I was just hard protecting something, and I got caught up in like the strategy that I like to use against my opponents, which is like going for small attacks and then finishing it off. So in this scenario, I've got one thing rested. If I had a really thin hand, maybe let's actually say I've got like 4 life. Like this is a pretty decent board, and this is a really strong character that has double attack. So you're probably wanting to protect it. However, if my hand was really thin in this situation, he's got 2 attacks. So if he goes for the first one, and maybe he does a 5, and I counter 1, um, but then he's still got all his Don left over, like, is he really going to leave this up? Like, or like maybe, no, he's probably put 1 on Zoro already, so he's gone for 6. Or if maybe, let's say he wasn't playing Zoro, maybe that's a bad example, but like, even if he's gone for 5, like if I counter 1, like this is probably coming for it at like 7 or something, or 6. Maybe I don't have a 2K, so like I'm throwing like 2 or 3 cards. So if I've got like a 4 card hand, then I go down to 1 card, which would protect it, yeah, but then I'm low. Or if he does 5 and then like 5 and then 7, so I counter 1, go down 1 card, and then this dies. Whereas if I just let that die to the 5 and then took the life, I'd then have an extra card in hand. So you really want to count your opponent's attacks and what their availability to use their characters and their Don is. You want to like go worst case scenario. So if the worst case scenario when they do 5, so you don't go, oh, 5 is an easy attack to counter out of, I'll counter 1. You don't think like that. You go, what is their availability after that attack? So if I counter 1 and then they're going to throw, if they could throw 7 at it and then I'm fucked, like I can't get a card off life, I've just thrown in a card and now this is dead. If that's the worst case scenario and then they're playing like a 4 cost, like maybe they're at 6 Don, like if that's the worst case scenario, then that kind of sucks. So what's the other scenario? They do 5, I let it die, then they, yeah, sure, they can attack me, but then I get an extra card, and now I've got, like, I'm 2 cards up in hand, which is going to help me win the board. And like maybe I'm looking for an extra card or something like that. So you really want to count what your opponent can do. And then on the other end, you want to do the opposite to your opponent. So if they've got something rested, you can do that to them. Like you do a small attack, and then if they fall for it, where like they counter it, you can then attack. And another thing is if you've got any removal cards, like I say you had this guy, like you do those small attacks, thin them out of hand, kill their guy at the end, because they think that they thought it would survive because they used all their counter, and now their hand's completely depleted and they can't play anything down. So that is probably one of the biggest things, is like knowing when to let your guys die and when to counter, how much to counter. On the other side though, sometimes protecting your guy is really, really important. So if he had multiple attackers, like let's say he had a really thin hand, and I had maybe let's say I had 4 cards in hand, he's already attacked like once and I'd like countered for 5. Like maybe I had a pretty decent hand, I've only got 1 attacker on field. He goes for the last attack, and like this is going to take like 2 or 3 cards out of hand, but his hand's really small. Like protecting this guy means that I'm going to do 2 swings and both of these are going to die. Whereas if I don't protect this guy, then I can kill 1, but then he's going to have 1 left on board. So sometimes it's really good to protect your guys, and you just got to count how many attacks and value what the board state is going to be at the end of the turn. Don't value it as like, oh, I'm countering on this one thing. You got to value at the end of the turn, what's the board state going to be like? And that also comes into play towards the end of the game. So when you've got blockers, your life, your opponent's life, you got to make sure that they're going to have not enough attacks to kill you, or not enough attacks to like clear your board, and then you're going to have 1 extra to like clear them or attack their board. So you're just trying to swing it into your favor. It's I've probably talked a little bit too much, but I hope some of the fundamentals of like having to swing at characters and that has made more sense. If people want more of an in-depth on how I like go about like clearing characters and swinging, maybe like let me know in the comments. Or I can go in depth on other things if you want, but you really think about like the outcome of the end of the turn is what I would say. Take it really slow and always think of the worst outcome. Like what could my opponent do here that would just like stuff me up, and then play against that. Don't play against like what you think your opponent might do. Do what, like if you were your opponent and you could just do the nastiest thing, what is that? And then like play against that. And that's my biggest tip, I'd say. I hope some of these tips helped you guys out and it helps you win games. These tips are really good just for the normal game as well. They don't apply as much just because like you can do all of this and it works. Like these are the fundamentals that like helps you win games, and then they just play like 9-cost Whitebeard. So that's how it works in the normal game. But they don't get to play 9-cost Whitebeard. So if I'm playing this side of it perfectly, like you don't get to play your like big characters that win you the game. Like so I'm winning. If you're not playing this right, then you get to win. So that's why I think this is fundamentals and it's really important. But you don't get to have those big strategies of like when you're doing things and like for like the normal game. But I hope some of these tips helped. Let me know down in the comments, guys. And thank you for watching. Remember to subscribe, like, comment, and all that jazz. See yous.